Hi, I'm Cheryl and welcome to my sewing room. I'm going to demonstrate how to put a border on either a cross-stitch picture or a needlepoint or some other embroidery picture that maybe you've just made or it's been sitting on the shelf for a while waiting to be completed. So let's take a look at one that I've done. Now, actually, I didn't make this cross stitch. This is one that my daughter made in junior high. Now, this is a one of a kind because this is the only cross stitch picture she has ever made and ever will make, because it turns out she doesn't like to sew in any way, shape, or form. So I took this once in a lifetime opportunity and framed this wonderful collectible for me. Now, the problem with getting this one framed is there is no frame out there that fits it, because as you can see, it's very narrow and very long. So there is no ready-made frame available to accommodate it. So what I've done is I put it into a larger frame and I've put a border using fabric around it. Now, you could go to a custom framer, have a frame made, have a custom mat made, and for a large picture it could cost you maybe $200 or more. It's very expensive. So often when we finish these, they just sit on the shelf because of the dilemma that we have. So let me show you how I went about doing this. So let's pretend this piece of fabric here is my picture that I want to put in a frame. So I'm going to go up in size, maybe 2 sizes. So once you've selected your frame, lay your project in the middle. And by the way, make sure that you follow the blocking instructions on your sewing kit, because you want to make sure that it's nice and straight. So do the blocking first before you start measuring for your border fabric. So center it, and as you can see, up at the top and the bottom, it's narrower than on the sides. So you need to cut pieces of fabric to accommodate that smaller space. I advise you though is to, let's say this is 2.5 inches, I would add either another 1.5 inch to 2 inches to that width. And do the same thing here. These are a lot wider, but add extra, because it's better to have it oversized because you can always cut it off, but it's hard to add it on. So go ahead, measure, and cut your pieces of fabric. So here's my fabric here. I'm going to start at the top and bottom of my picture and go ahead and place your fabric on there. Now, I always like to cut my fabric a little bit longer than I need. This way I can cut it off later and get it to be an exact fit. So go ahead and stitch it on using 1/4 inch seam, then press it with your iron, then unfold this and press on top. Make sure you push the seam away from your picture. So do this on the opposite end. Then you're going to need to cut the excess off. So take your ruler, line up those edges, and with your rotary cutter, go ahead and trim any excess fabric that may be there. You can do that on all 4 corners. So now you want to take the strips that go on the other 2 sides and place those on each side, and go ahead and line it up along the edges. There again, I like cutting my strips a little bit longer than I need. Then go ahead and stitch 1/4 inch seam along there. And remember, you're doing this on both sides. Then it should look like this. So now you want to press it with your iron. So press on the back side first, then unfold and press on top. Again, make sure you push this seam away from the picture. And always go to those corners and trim them off if there's anything to be trimmed off. Go ahead and do this at this time. Okay, now you need to decide how you're going to put it into the frame. So here's my pretend picture. In your framing stores, there is cardboard that you can purchase that is tacky. It has a little bit of glue on one side of it. And I have several issues with those, is that they don't come in a lot of sizes, different sizes. There's one that's maybe kind of large, and then there's one that's a little smaller. But if you have a really large picture, it's not going to fit. So that's one reason why I don't like them. The other reason is that if you're laying it down on that tacky board and you don't get your picture on straight and you try to remove it a little bit, you're starting to stretch your project out. So make sure before you even start putting your border on that you follow your blocking instructions. If I forgot to mention that earlier, follow those blocking instructions on that package, then put your border on, and then decide how you're going to put it into the frame. So if the tacky board is not what you want to do, another thing that you can do is on the back, you can take really heavy iron-on interfacing. There again, it's got a really thin layer of glue. You could put that on the back, and that keeps it stiff so that it will lay into the frame well. Another way, if that's not an option, is remove the cardboard off the back of the frame and center it on your project. Remember, if you cut your border a little bit wider, then this is the reason why. So you would center it, and then you would take your edges and fold it over onto the cardboard and then place tape. Now don't use Scotch tape because it'll come right off. I would maybe get some painter's tape and go ahead and place it on there and fold the edges over. So that's another way to how to do this. Now supposing you don't want to frame it, you want to make it into a pillow. So again, let me bring this back. You would go ahead and put your border on just like as if you were going to put it into a picture frame. Same steps, except if you're using a pillow form, then measure that pillow form, and of course add a little extra to that border to go into the seam allowance. So if you're going to turn it into a pillow, take your background fabric and then lay this on top of your background fabric, and then with your ruler and rotary cutter, cut an exact piece to fit. Just cut around all four sides and you've got an exact piece to fit. So let me show you an example of a pillow that I made. Here we go. I found this recently. There again, sitting on my shelf, mixed in with a bunch of other stuff. I think I made this about 2 years ago with the intent of turning it into a pillow, but I forgot. So when I was sewing this together, I selected peach fabric to go with the peach letters, and the little ruffle here I selected from the green. So I brought in all the colors together. Now if you don't know how to make a pillow, click on the link in the upper right hand corner and it will take you through the process of creating a pillow. Very easy steps. And if you're interested in putting a ruffle on your project, then click on the link in the upper right hand corner that will show you how to make a ruffle. Again, another easy process. I thought this really turned out nice. Now, to keep informed on all my future videos, click on one of my subscribe buttons. There's one down in the right hand corner and one in the upper left hand corner. Click on either one of those. YouTube's going to prompt you for your email address. Enter that information, and the next time I have a new video, YouTube sends you a brief email with a big button in the center. You click on it and it takes you directly to my latest video. I'm Cheryl and I'm really glad you came to my sewing room, and I'll see you next time, and happy sewing.